Hey guys, welcome back to another Faith in 5 Minutes. My name's Brian. I'm the student pastor at Kingdom Life Church, and this is a time that we get to spend looking at God's Word and growing in our walk with Jesus together. Now, if you've been involved in our student ministry, if you know me or know my family, you know that I have a dog and he's awesome. But if somebody didn't know what a dog was, I'd probably describe it to them as an animal that has fur, 4 legs, a tail, either floppy or pointy ears, and barks. And that way, if they ever ran across one, they would know that it was a dog. In the same way, there are some distinct characteristics of a Christian, of a follower of Jesus, a disciple, whatever you want to use to describe your relationship with Jesus. And we talked about that on Wednesday. We talked about some of the key components of what it means to demonstrate evidence of the fact that you're a disciple. And no other person could give a clearer description of that than Paul. And the reason was Paul experienced this himself. See, before he was a follower of Jesus, he hated Christians. In fact, he persecuted them, he cheered at their deaths, and he even made attempts to kill Christians himself. But then he had an experience with Jesus that completely changed his life and his outlook. And he wrote about what changes happen in the life of somebody who knows and loves and follows Jesus in Galatians chapter 2, verses 20 through 21. He wrote this: "I've been crucified with Christ. It is no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. And the life I now live in the flesh, I live by faith in the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me. I do not nullify the grace of God, for if righteousness were through the law, then Christ died for no purpose." Now again, this is a guy who recognized that prior to following Jesus, he sought to kill Christians. And now he's completely changed. Why is that? Well, he says that. He says that he had been crucified with Christ, and that it is no longer him that lives, but Christ lives in him. So he's saying, I gave my life to Jesus because Jesus gave his life to me. And what that means is that he was willing to stop living for his own desires, his own passions, his own will, and live for God's will for his life. And he didn't do that because he was trying to bolster some kind of spiritual resume. In fact, it was the exact opposite. See, before he gave his life to Christ, that's exactly how Paul, then Saul, lived. He was trying to bolster his spiritual resume. He was trying to do all of the right things to make his way to God. And then when he met Christ, he realized he didn't have to do that anymore, because Jesus paid the penalty for every sin that he had ever committed, and he called him into grace. And so he says, I'm doing this not because I have to, but because I want to, because I recognize what Jesus has done for me. And so I want to give my life to him. I want to live not for my flesh, not for my spiritual resume, not for a checklist that I feel like I have to come through with, but I want to do it because I recognize what Jesus gave for me. And then he says, but I don't nullify grace. He says, in fact, I still recognize that I need grace, and it's because God has given me this grace that I'm living this way. Not because I'm trying to earn righteousness, because he said if righteousness were through the law, then Christ died for no reason. Because if righteousness were through the law, Paul would have been the one that could have said, okay, I don't really need anything from God because I'm following his law to a T. He was a Pharisee of Pharisees, and so he recognized that even though he was following the law, he still needed grace. And he was so grateful to Jesus for giving him that grace that he willingly said, you know what? Whatever your will is, whatever your calling on my life is, I'm willing to give up what I want for you because I love you and I'm thankful for what you did for me. And that should be us. That should be us as followers of Jesus. We should be willing to say, you know what? I'm grateful for what Jesus did on the cross, and because I'm grateful for what Jesus did on the cross, I'm going to give my life fully and unapologetically to him. And so I really hope that you are in that same position, that you're like Paul in that way, that you're willing to give your life so that Jesus can do amazing things through you. And it's because you recognize the gratitude that you have for the cross and you're willing to give your life to him. Thanks for hanging out with us today, guys. Be sure to come back tomorrow where we'll finish up talking about what it means to be a disciple as a follower and a doer of God's word. We can't wait to see you then. Bye, guys.